Here I have some haunted house stories, some classic, some modern, but what do they all have in common apart from being haunted house stories? What is it about haunted houses that proves to be so evergreen? Why is it that we as a species are never done with writing and reading about haunted houses? There has to be a thing, right? There has to be a through line, a theme, a beating heart at the center of every haunted house that always has us coming back for more. But conversely, it must also be something that stops haunted house stories from ever feeling homogenized. Haunted houses to me are something of an enigma in that way. Like, as a big fan of horror fiction, I see the overlapping and repeated themes in many subgenres of horror. Slasher stories are very formulaic and they need original hooks to keep them fresh. Then there are monster stories, vampire stories, but the fun thing about vampires is there is so much that you can do with them. As we've seen in the evolution from things like Carmilla and Dracula to Interview with the Vampire and Twilight. But haunted houses are strangely unique because they have claustrophobic settings and so they are quite static by design. And they also have certain aesthetic and story beats that you expect to see. So how do they not get stale? How are they so evergreen? Let's talk about it. Now, I recently spent quite a while reading a bunch of haunted house stories in order to try and find an answer here, and I have two. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to focus on one of them. There are, as far as I'm concerned, two broad ways of looking at the haunted house. One is the haunting itself, the ghost, the house, the lore and history behind it, the reasons for the haunting. Are there repeated themes and ideas that haunted house authors repeatedly explore when they're looking at their ghosts and the homes which they haunt? Yes, but I don't really want to focus on that here. Instead, I'm going to focus on the other thing. The people, the victims, the protagonists, the innocents, the humans, whatever you want to call them. The people who are haunted and their relationship to both the ghosts and the houses. What does the house represent to them? What does it represent to us by extension? Because usually with a haunted house story, you might end up sympathizing with a ghost as you get to learn what they are, why they are haunting, blah, blah, blah. But it's rare that you will feel more attached to the ghost than the people who are being haunted. They are, after all, our point of view protagonists. And I want to look at what they have in common, what the through line is when it comes to the house, the haunting, and the connection between those things and our protagonists. And honestly, I can't think of a better place to begin than with one of the most famous and influential horror stories of all time, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Now, I have on my channel a full video review of this book if you're interested, but as a quick summary, The Haunting of Hill House follows a handful of protagonists who spend a few days at the titular Hill House. The leader of this team of people is a researcher who is interested in hauntings. Another character is the heir to the house, the nephew of the person who currently owns it. But the two most interesting protagonists in the novel are two women named Theo and Nell. Nell is arguably our protagonist. She is the person that we connect with the most. And The Haunting of Hill House, to my surprise when I read it, is a very, very queer-coded novel written back in the 1950s. The relationship that blossoms between Theo and Nell is very, very queer-coded. And as we learn more about Nell as a character, we see her as a tragically sad person who has gone through so much in her life. She has a terrible relationship to her childhood, to her past, to her family. She feels lost. She feels afloat. She feels untethered and disconnected from everyone and everything. And she sees Theo as a friend, a companion, a possible happy future when all is said and done. But in the second half of the novel, she doesn't just reveal the fact that she wants to go on living with and being friends with Theo. She also, if Theo says no to that, wants to stay in this haunted house because she feels a kinship and connection to the house itself, this strange place that has been haunting them every day after the sun sets. She feels safer in this house than she ever has done in her past, in her previous homes, with her previous so-called family members. So put a pin in that while I go through some other stories. Here we have Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. This is a gothic horror thriller. It is a novel that kind of toes the line between all three of those genres. And in this novel, our protagonist Vera grew up in a place known as the Crowder House, Crowder being her surname. But the Crowder House has become infamous for the fact that her father, while she was growing up, was secretly a serial killer, bringing victims to their basement, torturing and killing them. The reasons why he did that are explored as the novel goes on, as well as her relationship to her father. And Vera, now in her 30s, has returned to this house because her mother, who has gone on living there alone, is now dying. Over the course of her return to this house, strange happenings start to occur. She finds notes and letters left by her father that prove to her just how much he loved her, how much he thought of her and admired her, how much hope he had for her future. And every time she discovers one of these notes, we get flashbacks to her childhood with her father, to her relationship to him and to her mother and to the house, a house which, very importantly, he built with his own two hands. This is not a house that they bought or had someone else build. He built this house. He designed it, and he used it as a place to torture and kill his victims. Now, the house is showing Vera things that she never knew about her past. The house itself is alive. It almost seems to have blood and bones of its own. It is somehow connected to her and her father in ways that a house physically, literally, shouldn't be. And yet it is. Put a pin in that. Let's go on to another one. Here we have Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt, one of my favourite horror novels of all time. Tell Me I'm Worthless follows two ex-friends, one of whom is a trans woman and the other has become a transphobe. Why? How? What's the story behind that? Well, that's what we're kind of building towards as the novel almost moves backwards in time to a night that these two friends spent at a haunted house together. They also spent that night with a third friend who is not in the story. There's a lot of questions surrounding that night. What happened to their third friend? Why one of the characters went from being friends with a young trans woman to being very transphobic? What took place in this house? Well, as the novel goes on, and I'm not going to spoil what happened in the house, but we do learn about the house itself. The house is called Albion, and it is a very, very unsubtle metaphor for Britain itself. The house Albion is Britain. And when they were at university, two friends spent a night there, and it changed them forever. Ever since then, the trans woman has been haunted by literal ghosts. Strange things happen to her when she's at home, and her ex-friend is a campaigning TERF. What did Albion do to them? Put a pin in that. Let's move on. This is Rebecca, one of the great Gothic novels ever written. This book is considered by so many to be Daphne du Maurier's magnum opus. Again, I have done a video on this, so you can go check that out if you'd like to, but the thing that I and so many people love about Rebecca is Rebecca herself. See, Rebecca isn't really in the book. Rebecca's dead, and our protagonist doesn't even have a name, or at least we're never told her name. She is the second Mrs. De Winter. The first Mrs. De Winter was Rebecca. Maxim de Winter meets our protagonist in Monte Carlo. The two of them fall in love and return to his stately home in the English countryside. That home, very famously, is called Manderley. We know from the very first line of the novel that our protagonist will not remain there, that nobody will be there by the end of the book. How we get there is an amazing journey. But what's so wonderful about this book is the nature of the haunting itself. Because there is no haunting in Rebecca. There are no ghosts. Not literally. But then that brings up the question. When we talk about ghosts, what do we really mean? Are we being literal or metaphorical? In this book, we are speaking metaphorically. Our nameless protagonist is haunted by Rebecca. The fact that our protagonist is never given a name, but Rebecca's name is the title of the book, is very purposeful and it's very impactful. The ghost of Rebecca is haunting Manderley. Her memory is everywhere. It is felt by everyone. Rebecca was never let go of. But why? Our protagonist also never knew her. She's being haunted by a woman she never even met. And she's not even really being haunted. She tries so hard to fit into life at Manderley. She tries so hard to be a good wife to Maxim, but he doesn't seem to want her to. And I won't spoil how things shift and change from the halfway point, but just the nature of the haunting or lack thereof in Rebecca is mesmerizing, and we're going to come back to it. Moving on. This is Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman, author of Bird Box. This is a curious novel. It's pretty new. I think it came out maybe last year. And Incidents Around the House is told from the perspective of an 8-year-old girl named Bella. Because this is told from the perspective of an 8-year-old girl, the language is purposefully simple. There are no indented paragraphs, but rather entire line breaks. And there is very, very little punctuation. Nothing more complicated than a comma and a full stop. And Bella, who lives in a suburban house in modern USA, has her own strange boogeyman living in her closet. This thing, this ghost or monster, insists that Bella calls it her other mother. Anyone who's ever read or watched Coraline, I'm sure, is picturing buttons right now. And we don't know what other mother or other mummy is. It's a thing, a ghost, a person, a monster, something that comes out of Bella's closet, and up until recently, Bella has had happy memories of playing games with Other Mummy. Everything's been fine. She liked spending time with Other Mummy. She never told her parents about this thing. But very recently, Other Mummy has only ever said one thing to Bella, asked her repeatedly this one question: can I go into your heart? Which is a terrifying thing that when you first read it gives you goosebumps. What does that mean? Why? How? What is going on here? What or who is Other Mummy? Well, the novel ramps up in intensity pretty swiftly. It's a quick read. Soon enough, other people start to see Other Mummy. Bella reveals to her parents the existence of Other Mummy. The family is now being haunted by this thing, which is described so vaguely as being extremely tall and hairy, with the ability to crawl on the ceiling, and also with a face that seems to move around, shift from one side to another. This thing is nebulous in the way it's described. It's very unsettling and eerie. So the family is now being chased and haunted by this Other Mummy thing. The question is, why? Why is it after Bella? What does it mean when it asks the question, can I go inside your heart? What is it? What is it after? And why? These questions are burning. And of course, inside of those questions are the deeper questions of what does it represent? What is the point of all this? What are we getting at here? We'll touch on that in a sec. Moving on. We Used to Live Here is a fascinating work of thriller horror fiction. Marcus Kluwer's novel tells the story of a young woman who is pretty paranoid, probably has OCD, and one night an entire family shows up at her door and asks to come in because the father of the family says he used to live there. In fact, he grew up there. They were just passing through and he wants to show his family the place he grew up. Please, just for 5 minutes, can I please show my family around? Our protagonist, Eve, doesn't really want him to. She's nervous, she's paranoid. Her girlfriend, Charlie, isn't home right now, so it's up to Eve to decide what to do. When the little girl of the family starts batting her eyes and saying, please, 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 Eve gives in. But getting the family out is going to be very, very difficult. There is a reason after another for them not to go. And over time, Thomas, the father of the family, starts telling Eve about his childhood, about what it was like growing up in this house, about his sister who was hit with bouts of paranoia. She believed that the house was changing and that nobody else noticed. Walls would change color, things would move around, doorways would appear and disappear. The entire layout of the house shifted and moved. And when nobody believed her, she only grew more paranoid, to the point that she thought that family members were being replaced with copies. What does any of that mean? What does it mean to Eve? How is that going to affect the story going forward? Well, I have a very recent review of this book that you can go check out, but let's move on. The Reformatory by Tananarive Due is set in Jim Crow, Florida in 1950. Our protagonist, Robert, is a young boy who ends up getting into a situation, a physical confrontation with an antagonistic local white boy with some family ties and connections to local power. And so, unsurprisingly, Robert is sent to the titular Reformatory. It's a place for juvenile delinquents, and a place that he soon discovers is haunted by too many young black boys who have died there. This is a horror novel, but it's also very much a mystery. Robert is a young black boy in a place haunted by the ghosts of young black boys. And so it's not difficult to see that the ghosts are not the real terror here. We'll put a pin in this and move on. Finally, we have this, a collection of haunted house stories that has just been published here in the UK by my friends at Dead Ink, who sent me this, and, well, it was the publication of this that got me thinking about all of this, everything I've talked about. Unquiet Guests is a short collection of haunted house stories written by 10 different authors in the haunted house genre, or the broader horror genre. The first story, for example, is written by Grady Hendrix, and I honestly think it's the most entertaining story in this whole collection. Now, I am already a big fan of Grady Hendrix, and in this story, he does something very different with the haunted house theme, setting, and narrative. Our protagonist is a house, which isn't haunted exactly. It creates the haunting. The house is brand new. It is built for a wealthy family to live in. And over the course of this 10-15 page short story, we watch as the house gets more and more upset and confused and irritated by the people who live in it. We have a father, we have a mother who is pregnant, and we have 2 children. And the house can't stand the children. They are disruptive and annoying. And so the house is able to do things with its own form, with its body, with its limbs, to make sure that the children won't be around for long. It's able to close its own doors, move things around, mess with the pipes and the waterworks, not just to scare, but also to physically endanger these people, to get them to behave in ways that are more palatable to the house. The house is creating its own horror narrative, but without meaning to, rather just because it's sick of these people. In the story Another Land Between by Claire Fuller, we have 2 sisters, Jess and Hannah, who have inherited a house from their father, a man they never had anything to do with, or rather, he never wanted anything to do with them growing up. And this short story is set in that house. They have the keys, they are walking around, they are taking in this house and talking about their childhood, talking about their mother, their father, asking each other questions about him and what they remember of him, blah, blah, blah. As they go on exploring the house, they see things they've forgotten. They learn that they actually did spend time here in this house when they were children. And the story ends in a very interesting way that brings into question our relationship to home itself and to family more broadly. So, I've just gone through a whole bunch of horror novels and haunted house stories. And what do most of these stories have in common? Safety. That's my big takeaway here. In most of these stories, our protagonists are either looking for safety or are currently safe and finding their safety put at risk. For example, in The Haunting of Hill House, the house that is haunted is not the home of our protagonists, but instead this is kind of an inversion of that idea, where one of our protagonists has found a haunted house that feels more like home than anything she's ever known. She is a closeted queer woman who has been abused and ignored. She's never felt at home anywhere. And now this strange haunted house, while it feels enigmatic and dangerous to other people, actually feels like the kind of place that she could see as a home, a safe haven for her as an outsider. Conversely, in Incidents Around the House, we have an 8-year-old girl who should, at this moment in her life, feel more at home in her home than anywhere else in the world. Your home is is your castle. It is your safe haven. It is a place where pain and misery, these things should not exist. Bad things can happen out in the world where other people can be unpredictable, where you will learn difficult life lessons. But in the home, that's your den. That is your safety. That is a place where you can be yourself, where you can ignore everything else and just play. Eat, sleep, uninterrupted, especially when it comes to children. But here we have an 8-year-old girl whose bedroom, the very heart of that safety, has been invaded by something that at first seems to be her friend. There's a fly on the camera. Go away. And then it reveals itself to be something dangerous. Something that not only has entered her home, not only has entered her bedroom, but now wants to enter her heart. This thing, whatever it may be, wants to pierce all the way through, barrier upon barrier of safety and comfort, destroying and upheaving everything that a child should feel safe in. It's horrible. In Rebecca, our protagonist is the outsider, but she's been invited to make this place her home, only to find that the comfort that she sought with a man that she's fallen in love with is at jeopardy because of a person who isn't actually haunting the house. A woman who left her mark on this home, on the people who work there and live there, in such a profound way as to spoil the potential happiness that our protagonist is looking for. And Rebecca isn't just haunting the house. If you've read the novel, then you know that she's also haunting Maxim. There are things that he has not told his new wife about his first wife, about his relationship to her, about what she was like living in this home. This home is supposed to be a sanctuary, but Rebecca has destroyed that from beyond the grave. From back in time, she managed to destroy the life of a woman she never knew, a woman she could never have known would marry her husband, live in her home. She managed to do so much damage. And now this home has been spoiled by a thing that isn't even a ghost. A home can be made to feel so unsafe, so haunted by the actions of people who've come before, by the memories of people, the things that they do that stay with us. Rebecca remains in this home because of the people who choose to remember her and how they remember her. Because there is one person in this home who remembers her fondly and another who doesn't. Our homes are not safe. The frailty, the fragility of our homes, it is paper thin. And we often don't know it. In Tell Me I'm Worthless, Alison Rumfitt makes that an even larger point, literally, by making Britain a haunted house, a place of fascism, a place of racism and bigotry. Britain is a haunted house that spoils and disrupts everyone who goes near it. It's a place that chews you up and spits you out, leaving you either feeling haunted or angry. In Just Like Home, our protagonist returns to her childhood home, a place that, as the book goes on, she remembers feeling more comfortable in than she is comfortable understanding. The events of the past, the things that her father did, they left a stain on this home. They destroyed it. They made it rotten. And yet Vera is wrangling with all of that as she spends more and more time there. As she learns about her childhood, the house itself is wrapping its arms around her, and she has to figure out how she feels about that. Haunted houses speak to us. They are an evergreen thing, at least in part because they examine our relationship to our homes. Either new homes that we move into, or homes that we grew up in. Homes that we return to, homes that we find and feel a connection to, are drawn to in some way. Every single human being deserves a home, deserves a place where they feel safe. What happens when that place is haunted? What happens when our ultimate safety is put at risk? That is often the big question at the heart of a haunted house story. And the reason it's so evergreen is because you can tell 1,000 different stories with that theme at their core. What about the woman who is drawn to a haunted house because of her past? What about the child who no longer feels safe in her perfectly ordinary suburban home? What about the woman who moves into her husband's home only to find that it is haunted by the memories of his first wife? There are so many questions that we can ask, but at the heart of it all is the idea of home equaling safety and what we can do to twist that, to shatter it, to put it at risk. The haunted house is a marvelous concept, an evergreen thing, because you can have someone living in a home or have someone entering a new home, and whichever way you look at it, you're looking at the idea of home equaling safety, and what happens when that safety disappears. I love haunted houses. And like I said at the beginning, this isn't it. There is more to talk about when it comes to haunted houses. Like I said, we can look at the ghosts, the reasons for the hauntings, the history of a home, the way in which a home feels like a ghost in and of itself sometimes. You can go on and on and on and dig deeper and deeper and look at all of the different angles that I haven't explored here, but the home being a safe place that is shattered is so vital to the DNA of the haunted house. And I really love that. I hope you've enjoyed this. I really want to know your thoughts on everything I've said here and what other insights you have that I didn't talk about. Books that I could have brought up, but maybe I haven't read them or I forgot to mention them. And while you're thinking, maybe you should read some more horror stories. These ones, to be exact. Managing and Other Lies. A collection of 1 novella and 5 short stories, all written by me. These are queer, haunted house gothic horror stories. Well, not all of them are, but they are all excellent short horror stories that I wrote and I'm very, very proud of. My second book is nearly complete, by the way. I am finishing up a novella. So look forward to that. I'll announce it soon. I'm really, really happy with it. It's different, but also not. No, it's pretty different, but also not. You'll see. If you haven't read this, you can go into the description. Click the like button on the way down, and there are links to where you can buy Managing and Other Lies. And of course, if you've enjoyed this video and you have $1 a month to spare, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Your support would mean the absolute world to me. My patrons are the best people. I'm so grateful every single day for their continuing support on Patreon. So thank you in advance and subscribe for books.